She's not even blood." That sentence, said in a voice dripping with entitlement, sliced through the air like a knife. It wasn't whispered, it wasn't muttered, it was hurled, right in front of everyone, right in front of him. My grandfather. My cousin Rachel said it without blinking, with her arms crossed and her nose tilted high, as though she were doing the family a favor by pointing out the obvious. "My name is Lila Thomas. I'm 28. And no, I'm not blood. I was adopted into the Thomas family when I was 4 years old, after my birth parents died in a car crash. I don't remember much about that life. But what I do remember, what has shaped me, is the love I was shown by the people who chose me, especially Grandpa Walter. He was my everything growing up. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to plant tomatoes in the backyard, how to throw a punch when boys got handsy in school, and how to treat people with kindness, no matter what the world whispered behind your back. But Rachel never accepted me. From the time we were kids, she made it clear I didn't belong. At family dinners, she'd make jokes about charity cases. When we were teenagers, she once locked me out of our hotel room during a family trip, saying the extra bed was for actual Thomases. And now, at 31, she was still playing that same broken record, this time in front of everyone at Grandpa's retirement celebration. It was supposed to be a happy day. Grandpa Walter was stepping down from his law firm after 55 years. The family had gathered in the garden of his house, tables decorated with red peonies, his favorite, candles flickering under the soft glow of string lights, laughter floating above the sound of clinking glasses. And then, out of nowhere, Rachel's voice cut through the air like a thunderclap. "She's not even blood," she repeated, this time looking directly at me. Everything went quiet. My aunt shifted uncomfortably in her chair. My uncle pretended to check his phone. Even my mother, my adoptive mother, just stared into her wine glass like she was hoping to sink into it. And Grandpa? He looked at me. His expression didn't change. He didn't react, not immediately. But his jaw clenched slightly, just once. That was how I knew it had stung. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, tight and polite, and excused myself. I walked into the house, found the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. My lipstick was still perfect. My curls were still in place. But my heart? It felt like someone had stepped on it. I thought I was over this. I thought at almost 30, those jabs wouldn't land anymore. But it still hurt. Not because I believed her, but because somewhere, deep down, I was still that little girl, desperate to be seen as family. I thought about leaving, just grabbing my purse and driving off. Let her have the night. Let them all pretend I didn't exist. But then Grandpa knocked on the door. Gently, 3 soft taps. "Can I come in, kiddo?" I opened the door. He didn't say much. He just looked at me and said, "Come sit with me for a second. I want to tell you something important before the speeches start." I followed him to his study, the one filled with law books and cigar boxes and old family photographs. He walked slowly. His knees weren't what they used to be, but when he sat down and opened the top drawer of his antique desk, I knew something was coming. He pulled out a small velvet box, and when he opened it, I saw it. The ring, an heirloom, his mother's engagement ring, a sapphire set in a halo of diamonds. It had been in the family for generations. Everyone assumed Rachel would get it. Everyone. Even I thought so. But he held it out to me. "This belongs to you, Lila," he said quietly, "because blood doesn't make family. Love does." I didn't take the ring at first. I just stared at it, this delicate, breathtaking piece of family history, sitting in Grandpa's weathered hand. It shimmered under the yellow lamp like it knew exactly what it was worth, not just in dollars, but in meaning. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice cracking in disbelief. "Are you sure?" He smiled, softly, with that tired wisdom he carried in his eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything." I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't even reach for it. Not yet. Because I knew what this would mean, to Rachel, to the entire family. This wasn't just a ring, it was a statement. And suddenly, the weight of that gesture felt heavier than the ring itself. "But everyone expects..." "Everyone," he interrupted, "has opinions. doesn't mean they're right. Rachel's always been loud, but she's never been kind. You, Lila, you've shown up, time and time again. For me, for your mother, for this family. I remembered all the moments he was referring to. Driving. Grandpa to his cardiologist appointments when no one else could be bothered. Fixing the garden fence after a storm. Showing up to every Christmas dinner, even when I knew Rachel would be there, waiting to say something awful. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn a place at a table I was technically already seated. And now he was giving me more than a seat. He was giving me a legacy. I reached out slowly and closed the box. Then hold on to it. Until the right moment, I said, voice barely above a whisper. Let's not ruin tonight. He nodded, understanding immediately. He patted my hand, and we sat in silence for a few seconds. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I'm proud of you, kiddo, he said. And for once, I believed it. Back outside, the party had resumed its easy rhythm. Jazz music played over a wireless speaker. Someone was slicing cake. Rachel was by the wine table, holding court with her usual smug charm, retelling a story about her recent trip to Paris, loudly, for maximum attention. I rejoined the group, sliding quietly into my seat. Rachel barely looked at me, but when Grandpa stood up to speak, her eyes snapped forward like she was expecting to be crowned queen. He tapped the microphone and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to have my family here, every single one of you. His gaze lingered on me for just a moment. Then, in the middle of a few jokes about retirement and golf, and forgetting where he left his glasses, he paused. There's something else, he said, reaching into his pocket. Before I forget, because, let's face it, these days I forget more than I remember. A small chuckle moved through the crowd. I want to hand down something, a tradition. This ring, he said, holding up the velvet box, has been passed through generations in this family, and I've made my decision about where it goes next. Rachel stood up, actually stood up, brushing her dress down, smiling as if she were being called on stage. But then, without looking at her once, Grandpa turned to me. Lila. The name hit the air like thunder. Rachel's smile twitched. You're the one I trust to carry this forward, Grandpa said, because you've proven what family really means, not through blood, but through love. I didn't stand. I didn't have to. Everyone had already turned toward me, stunned, silent. Grandpa opened the box. The ring sparkled like it was lighting. The moment from within. Rachel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, in the hush, someone whispered, Wow. He stepped forward and placed the box in my hands. It was the most public form of validation I'd ever received. And Rachel? She turned on her heel and stormed inside. The silence that followed Rachel's exit was so loud, it drowned out the soft jazz still playing. A few people tried to act normal. My aunt coughed into her napkin, someone picked up a dessert plate, but no one missed the spectacle. The tension sat like a weight on everyone's shoulders. I was still holding the box. My hands weren't trembling. I thought they would be. But instead, they felt grounded. Like the years of being overlooked had finally been given shape. Recognition wasn't something I'd chased for drama. I'd learned long ago that family didn't always clap for the quiet ones. But in that moment, it felt like I had finally stopped whispering my worth, and someone had said, We heard you anyway. Grandpa sat beside me again, as calm as ever, and said, She'll come around, or she won't. That's her choice, but I needed everyone to know how I feel. I nodded, but I couldn't pretend the moment didn't feel heavy. I hadn't wanted to win anything. This wasn't a competition to me. It was a family. Or, at least it was supposed to be. I excused myself after a while, slipping through the back door into the house. It was darker inside, the only light coming from the chandelier in the hallway. That's when I heard it. Sobbing. It was faint, but unmistakable, coming from the guest bedroom down the hall. I paused. Part of me wanted to turn around, just leave it be, but I didn't. I walked slowly to the door and knocked. What? Rachel's voice was sharp, brittle. It's me, I said. Silence, then. Of course it is. I opened the door. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her makeup smudged, shoes kicked off, legs pulled up like she was bracing for another blow. Came to gloat? She snapped. I walked in and closed the door behind me. No. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, she wasn't wearing that tight, superior smirk. She looked lost. Do you even understand what you took from me? She asked. Her voice cracked on the last word. I sat on the chair by the dresser. I didn't take anything. He gave it to me. He was supposed to give it to me, she hissed. It was always understood. That ring was mine. I'm his real granddaughter. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. I could have yelled. I could have listed every moment she had made me feel less than human. But I didn't, because I saw what she hadn't yet realized. She thought the ring meant she was loved. She thought the blood in her veins was enough. Being related doesn't mean you showed up, I said calmly. It doesn't mean you called him after his surgeries or helped him go through Grandma's things when she passed. It doesn't mean you visited when he was lonely. You think it was about the ring, Rachel, but it wasn't. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back with the same pride that had built her entire personality. She looked away. He always looked at you like you were some miracle, like you could do no wrong. No, I said gently. He just saw me, that's all. She didn't respond. I stood, walking toward the door. You can hate me if it helps, but that won't change the fact that he made his choice. Then, I left her in the dim bedroom, unsure whether that was the end of our relationship or the beginning of something raw and honest. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the lanterns were being taken down, I sat alone on the back porch with Grandpa. I didn't mean to cause a scene, I said. He chuckled. You didn't. Rachel did. I turned the ring box over in my hands, again, and asked, Do you think she'll forgive me? Grandpa sighed. Forgiveness only comes when people let go of their own story long enough to hear someone else's. She hasn't done that yet. But you've always listened, Lila, and that's why I trust you with more than a ring. I nodded, quietly, taking in his words. He looked out toward the darkened garden and said, Family isn't who shouts the loudest. It's who stays when it's quiet. The next few days were strange. The party ended, but the tension lingered. Family group chats went quiet. My aunt forwarded me a meme with no comment, her way of pretending nothing had happened. My uncle liked one of my Instagram photos from last year, as if that counted as outreach. And Rachel? Silence. But the ring sat on my dresser like a conversation, waiting to be had. I didn't wear it. Not yet. It felt too loud, too final. Instead, I spent the next few mornings walking through the neighborhood with Grandpa, like we used to before his knees started complaining. I brought the coffee, he brought the stories. Your grandma wore that ring every day, he said one morning, nodding toward the box in my coat pocket. Even when she was gardening, got dirt all over the setting, drove the jeweler mad. I laughed, imagining her, fierce, stubborn, beautiful, with muddy gloves and a diamond ring sparkling in the sun. Did she ever want to give it to someone else? I asked. He paused at the corner where the azaleas bloomed every spring. She asked me once, Do you think it'll cause a fight someday? And I told her, Probably. But if it does, we picked the wrong person to carry it. That hit me in a way I wasn't ready for. I had always carried this invisible weight, this idea that I was lucky to be included. The kind of thinking that makes you fold your opinions before you speak, the kind that makes you apologize for taking up space. But now I was being told, clearly and undeniably, that I was chosen, not accidentally, not out of pity, but on purpose. Still, not everyone saw it that way. That weekend, I went to visit my mom. She'd been quiet since the party. Not cold, just careful. She greeted me with a tight hug and chamomile tea, like always. So, quite the announcement, she said gently as we sat in the living room. I didn't know he was going to do that, I replied. I would have stopped him if I had. She shook her head. You shouldn't have to stop anyone from loving you. I smiled, but there was something behind her eyes, something unsure. You know, she said, stirring her tea. When we first brought you home, your grandfather was the only one who didn't hesitate. Everyone else had questions, concerns, even me. That surprised me. You? She nodded. Not because I didn't want you, but because I didn't know if I could be what you needed. You were 4 years old, Lila. You'd already lost so much, and I was terrified I'd mess it up. You didn't, I whispered. She smiled, but her eyes misted. Your grandpa was the first one to say, she's ours now, so we raise her like she's always been. And he did. God, he did. We sat in silence for a moment, each of us lost in memories. Then she asked something I wasn't expecting. Do you think you'll keep the ring? I looked at her. You think I shouldn't? No, she said quickly. I know what it means. To Rachel, to everyone. And what does it mean to me? I asked softly. She blinked. That was the moment I think she truly saw it from my side. You're right, she said finally. You're the one who sat beside him at every chemo session. You're the one who read to him when his eyes went bad. You didn't do those things to earn anything, but maybe that's exactly why you deserve it. I held her hand across the couch. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I had to ask her to be proud of me. I could feel it in the quiet between us. Later that night, I received a message from Rachel. 4 words. We need to talk. 4 words, just 4. But they felt heavier than all the years of silence, side eyes, and underhanded comments combined. We need to talk. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't war. It was something in between. And honestly, I didn't know how to feel about it. I waited 2 hours before replying, not to be petty, but because I needed time. Time to remind myself that I didn't owe her calm just because she finally found the decency to reach out. Okay, tomorrow, my place, 3 p.m. Her reply came instantly. Fine. When she arrived, it was exactly on the hour. Of course. Punctuality was one of her weapons, alongside her expensive perfume and permanently arched brows. But this time she didn't walk in like she owned the place. She looked tired, not like she hadn't slept, but like something in her had deflated. I poured us tea, because it's what I do when my hands need a job, and we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. She stared at the cup for a moment before finally speaking. I thought I was prepared, she said, voice barely above. A whisper. For what? For being passed over. I tilted my head slightly. Then why did it feel like you weren't? She sighed. Because I wasn't. I told myself I didn't care, that it was just a ring. But then, the look in everyone's eyes, the shock, the pity, like they expected me to throw a tantrum, like they already saw me as the villain. And maybe, I said gently, it's because they've seen the way you've treated me over the years. She looked up, caught off guard by the honesty. You think I'm cruel. I know you're cruel, I said, voice calm but firm. But I also think you're scared. Scared that someone not born into this family could be loved more than someone who was. Her eyes filled, but she didn't blink them away this time. She let them fall. My mom always told me I had to protect the Thomas legacy, she said, that if I didn't stand up for it, it would slip away. When you came into the picture, it was like I was being replaced. I never wanted to replace anyone, I said. I just wanted to belong. Rachel shook her head. You do. That's what I realized. You're not just blood. You're the heart of this family. You've been there. Even when no one saw it. And I was busy trying to stay important. It was strange, hearing her finally speak like a person, not a performance. I'm sorry, Lila, she whispered. Not just for what I said at the party, for everything. I took a slow breath. I appreciate that, but I don't forgive you yet. It doesn't work like that. She nodded. I know. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea like 2 women who'd lived through the same storm but built different kinds of boats. Then she looked at me, straight on. I still don't agree with Grandpa's choice, but I understand it now. That ring, it wasn't about family tradition. It was about trust and love. I said nothing. I didn't need to. After she left, I opened the velvet box again. The sapphire winked at me in the afternoon sun. And I finally slipped it onto my finger. Not because it made me feel powerful, but because I no longer felt like I had to prove that I belonged. I already did. 2 weeks later, we gathered again. This time, it wasn't for a party or celebration. Grandpa had asked all of us to meet at his house on Sunday. No specific reason given, just family time, which after everything was its own kind of suspense. Everyone showed up. My mother brought lemon pie. My uncle brought store-bought cookies and tried to pass them off as homemade. Rachel arrived last, fashionably late per usual, but with noticeably less eyeliner and a softer edge to her posture. We ate on the back patio again. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, wearing a cardigan I'd knitted for him years ago. The atmosphere wasn't exactly warm, but it wasn't hostile either, like everyone was holding their breath to see which version of the family would show up today. Once dessert was served, Grandpa cleared his throat. I wanted to say something. He began standing slowly. Because I've been doing a lot of thinking, and because, frankly, I'm tired of secrets and pretending everything is fine when it's not. Everyone froze. He looked around the table, pausing briefly at Rachel, then at me. There's been a lot of talk about what makes someone family, about who deserves what, about blood. But I'm here to tell you something I should have made clearer years ago. He turned slightly toward me and said, when we brought Lila into this family, she didn't come with a manual. She came with questions, trauma, a heart that had already been broken before she knew how to spell the word. But she also came with something this family sorely needed, grace. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She didn't try to take anyone's place. She just loved us, in small, quiet ways that most people missed. But I didn't. I saw every moment. He looked back at the rest of the family. And so, when I gave her the ring, I wasn't making a statement about tradition. I was making a statement about character. Because when I'm gone, I want the things that matter to go to someone who understands what they're worth. He sat down slowly. That's all I wanted to say. The silence afterward was deafening. Not a word, not a fork clink, just air thick with everything that had gone unsaid for too long. Rachel stood up. Her expression was unreadable. But her eyes, for once, weren't lit with condescension or bitterness. They were just wet. I need some air, she muttered. And then she walked out. Everyone watched her go. My uncle started to stand, like he was going to follow her, but my mother gently placed her hand on his arm. Let her go, she said. She needs to feel it. I remained in my seat, quiet, still. The ring was on my hand, catching glints of sunlight like it belonged there all along. And this time, nobody looked surprised. Later that evening, Grandpa found me by the rose bushes. She'll be okay, he said, not asking, just stating. I nodded. Eventually. I meant what I said, Lila. You've got more family in your pinky than some people have in their whole family tree. I smiled, blinking back tears. You always say the nicest insults. He laughed. It's a gift. Then he grew serious. The ring, it's not the last thing I'm giving. You. I looked at him, confused. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handwritten, my name on the front. I've started rewriting the will, he said. It's time things reflect the truth. I opened it later that night. Inside were instructions, not just about the ring, but about the house, his journals, even the garden. It was everything that mattered to him, and he was giving it to me. Not because I asked, not because I demanded, but because I showed up. Because love, when seen and nurtured, speaks louder than DNA, and because sometimes the one who was, never meant to inherit the legacy, is the only one strong enough to carry it. A few months passed. Spring turned to summer, and the garden Grandpa loved bloomed brighter than it had in years. I kept it up, just like he taught me, trimming the roses carefully, planting fresh herbs near the steps, watering every evening before the sun dipped low. The ring never left my finger. It wasn't about showing it off. I wasn't flaunting anything. But every time I looked at it, I was reminded of the journey. Not just mine, but his. A man who didn't care about optics or expectations, who chose with his heart even when the family questioned him. Grandpa passed quietly one morning in July. He was sitting in his reading chair with a blanket over his lap and the crossword, half finished. There was no pain, no panic, just peace, the way he'd always wanted it. I was the one who found him. I sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand, whispering a thank you I knew he could still hear, wherever he was. The funeral was simple, just like he'd requested. No long speeches, no grand gestures, just people. Those who loved him, those who owed him, those he'd helped without asking anything in return. Rachel was there, in black, silent. We didn't speak at the service, but afterward, as people trickled away and the sky shifted toward dusk, she approached me outside near the roses. "They're still blooming," she said, touching one lightly. I nodded. "He took care of them like they were people." She gave a small, sad smile. I didn't know how much I'd miss him. "You do now," I said softly. Then she turned to me. I read the will. I tensed for just a moment, but her face didn't change. She looked tired again, but this time in a softer way, like someone who'd stopped pretending to be anything other than human. "I expected to be angry," she said, "but honestly, I'm not. He made the right call." I blinked. "That means more than you know." "I still wish it were me," she admitted, "but I think, deep down, I always knew it wouldn't be." We stood there together, in the quiet, and then without warning she reached into her bag and handed me something, an old photo of us as kids. I'd never seen it before. Me, awkward in overalls, her with messy braids. We were sitting side by side on the porch steps, both smiling, maybe 6 or 7 years old. "I found it in one of his boxes," she said. "He kept it with his most important things." I stared at the photo. We looked like sisters. "I don't remember this day," I whispered. "I do," Rachel said. "It was the only day I didn't feel like I had to compete with you." I looked up at her. There was no hatred in her eyes now, just truth. We didn't hug, we didn't cry, but we stood in that moment with something we'd never had before, mutual understanding. Later that night, I sat in Grandpa's chair with his journals in my lap. The first page had a note in his handwriting. "To Lila, the one who turned love into legacy. I knew it from the start. I just waited for the rest of them to catch up." I closed the journal, heart full, eyes wet. Sometimes family is loud and messy. Sometimes it's quiet and chosen. And sometimes it's found in the ashes of what you were never supposed to have, but held on to anyway, not out of entitlement, but out of love.